She took his hand and said, "Mama is waiting." The rancher wasn't ready for what he found beyond the trees. The sun had barely risen over the Montana plains when Daniel Hayes stepped out onto his porch. The air was cold, the kind that clung to your skin and reminded you how alone you were. His ranch stretched for miles, golden grass, weathered fences, and silence that felt heavier than it should. Daniel liked the quiet. After losing his wife 3 years ago, quiet was the only thing that didn't ask questions. He grabbed his tools and walked toward the broken fence along the north pasture. A storm had rolled through the night before, knocking down posts and spooking the cattle. As he knelt to fix the splintered wood, he heard something unusual. Footsteps. Soft. Slow. Barely there. He turned. Standing about 20 feet away was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 6. She wore a faded brown dress that looked too thin for the cold morning air. Her long hair hung loosely over her shoulders, slightly tangled. And she was barefoot. In her small hand, she carried a dented tin bucket. Daniel stood slowly. "Hey there," he said gently. "You lost?" The girl didn't answer at first. She just stared at him with wide, serious eyes. Not scared, not crying, just certain. Then she stepped closer. When she was only a few feet away, she reached out and lightly touched his rough hand. "Mama is waiting," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "Waiting where?" The girl turned her head toward the tree line beyond the pasture. The woods were thick there, old pine and cottonwood trees that bordered the far edge of his property. No one lived out that way. At least, not that he knew of. "Can you show me?" he asked. She nodded once, and without another word, she began walking. Daniel hesitated. Every sensible part of him said this was strange. No parents in sight, no car, no nearby houses, just a barefoot child appearing at dawn out of nowhere. But something in her voice, steady and urgent, pulled at him. He followed. The grass was damp under his boots. The girl walked carefully but confidently, as if she had made this trip many times before. She didn't look back to see if he was coming. She seemed to know he would. They reached the edge of the woods. The air changed there, colder, still. Branches cracked under Daniel's boots as he stepped into the trees. The light dimmed beneath the thick canopy, and the smell of pine filled the air. "How far?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. They walked for nearly 10 minutes before Daniel saw it. A small, broken-down cabin tucked between the trees. Its roof sagged. One window was boarded shut. The front door hung slightly open. Daniel's stomach tightened. The girl stopped a few steps from the door. "She's inside," she said quietly. Daniel moved ahead of her, his heart pounding. He pushed the door open wider. Inside, the cabin was dim and cold. A small cot sat against the wall. A thin blanket covered a woman lying motionless on top of it. For one terrifying second, Daniel thought he was too late. Then he heard it, a faint breath. He rushed forward. The woman was pale, her lips dry and cracked. A damp cloth rested on her forehead. An empty water jug lay tipped over on the floor. She was alive, but barely. "Ma'am," Daniel said firmly but gently. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. The little girl stepped inside and ran to her mother's side. "I brought him," she said softly. The woman's eyes slowly focused on Daniel. There was fear there at first, then relief. "I tried to get help," she whispered weakly. "Car broke down 2 miles back. I've been sick." Daniel acted fast. "I'll get you both out of here," he said. "You're safe now." He scooped the woman carefully into his arms. She was frighteningly light. The girl grabbed her tin bucket and followed closely behind. The walk back felt longer. Daniel's mind raced. How long had they been here? Why hadn't anyone noticed? How had this little girl managed alone? When they finally reached his truck, he laid the woman gently in the back seat and wrapped her in his jacket. The girl climbed in beside her without being told. Daniel drove straight to town. The doctor later told him that if they had waited another day, the outcome might have been very different. Severe dehydration, high fever, exhaustion. She's lucky, the doctor said. And that little girl of hers. Brave as they come. Daniel stood outside the hospital room that evening, watching through the window as the girl sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand. He hadn't planned on his quiet life changing. But sometimes, life doesn't ask. The next morning, when he returned with fresh clothes and warm food, the woman, whose name he learned was Emily, looked stronger. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. Daniel glanced at the girl. "You already did," he replied. Over the next few weeks, he helped them sort things out. Emily's car had broken down while she was trying to leave a difficult situation in another state. She had been determined to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. The cabin in the woods had been unlocked and abandoned. She had thought they could rest there for a night. Then she got sick. Daniel repaired her car himself once it was towed in. But when it was ready, Emily hesitated. "There's nothing waiting for us back there," she admitted. "No home, no one." Daniel looked out across the open fields of his ranch. He had spent 3 years believing silence was easier than connection. But that morning in the pasture had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. "You don't have to rush off," he said carefully. "The ranch could use some help. And, it's a big place." Emily's eyes filled with tears. The little girl smiled for the first time since he had met her. Spring came early that year. Laughter slowly replaced silence. Tiny bare feet no longer walked alone through cold grass. And Daniel realized something unexpected. He hadn't just rescued them. They had rescued him too. Sometimes, the people we save end up saving us right back. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable journeys of hope and second chances.